The chains were heavy around Daniel Reeves' wrists. The clinking of metal echoed in the vast marble hallway as alien guards pushed him forward. His boots dragged against the polished floor, and his breath came slow but steady. He had been through war, through fire and blood. But this moment felt different. He was not walking into a battlefield. He was walking into judgment. The throne hall of the Xyrath Empire opened before him like the inside of a giant cathedral. The roof stretched so high that the pillars seemed endless, glowing with blue light from crystals fixed above. Alien nobles lined the sides, their insect-like bodies clicking, mandibles twitching, multifaceted eyes reflecting his small human shape. Their whispers sounded like scraping glass, sharp and cold. Daniel was the only human here. The last soldier of a broken unit, captured after months of desperate resistance. He had seen friends fall one by one, cities turned to ash, and fleets shattered. Now, the Empire wanted him displayed as proof that humanity was beaten. The guards shoved him hard, forcing him to his knees. His shackles rattled and his head bowed unwillingly. A murmur ran through the crowd of nobles, as though the sight of a kneeling human gave them satisfaction. Daniel clenched his jaw. He hated giving them that image. At the far end of the hall, the queen of the Xyrath Empire sat upon her throne. She was taller than her guards, her chitinous body gleaming with gold and emerald hues under the light. A long crown shaped like branching horns rested upon her brow. Her presence was enough to silence the entire room. Daniel had heard rumors of her, cold, merciless, a ruler who had crushed 3 star systems under her command. Many said she was born for war. Others whispered she was untouchable, unfeeling, as sharp as the blade of a spear. Prisoner of war, the herald announced, his voice buzzing like an electric current. Daniel Reeve of Earth, he stands accused of crimes against the Empire. Resistance, destruction of supply lines, the death of loyal soldiers. He awaits judgment. The queen's dark eyes glowed faintly. She leaned forward, studying the shackled man. For a long silence, nothing moved. Daniel lifted his head slowly, meeting her gaze. His lips curved into the faintest smile, not one of joy, but of defiance. He would not cower. He would not break. "Go ahead," he said, his voice rough from exhaustion but steady. "Pass your judgment, but know this: humanity does not kneel, not to you, not to anyone." Gasps rippled through the court. The alien nobles hissed in outrage. Some clacked their mandibles, a sign of insult in their culture. The guards pressed closer, one raising a spear toward his neck. The queen raised her hand. Instantly, the hall fell silent again. The guards froze, their weapons lowering. She stared at him. Her eyes widened just slightly, almost impossible to notice, but Daniel caught it. Her claws gripped the arms of her throne, and for the first time her body shifted. Then she did something no one in that hall expected. She stood up. The nobles gasped again, louder this time. Whispers spread like wildfire. The queen never rose from her throne, not even for visiting kings or victorious generals. To stand was a gesture of recognition, respect, or shock. Her voice, deep yet strangely smooth, echoed through the chamber. "That voice," she murmured, almost to herself. Daniel blinked, confused. His voice? Why would she care about that? The queen stepped down from her throne, each movement slow but deliberate. The sound of her clawed feet echoed against the crystal floor. Her gaze never left him. "Remove his chains," she ordered. The entire court exploded in noise. Nobles shouted protests, their voices overlapping in a storm of anger. "Impossible! He is an enemy! He must die!" But the queen silenced them with a single glance. Her authority was absolute. The guards hesitated, then obeyed. They unlocked the shackles with metallic clicks. The chains fell to the ground with a heavy thud. Daniel flexed his wrists, rubbing the red marks the metal had left behind. He was free, at least for now. The queen stood before him, her height towering over his human form. Yet her expression was not cruel. It was searching, uncertain. I know this voice, she said again, louder now so the whole court could hear. Years ago, on a world far from here, I heard it. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He searched his memory, trying to understand. He had been on many missions, spoken to many beings, but something tugged faintly at the back of his mind. You, the Queen continued. Her voice was firm now, her mandibles clicking once before she spoke in the common tongue. You were there, when I was not yet Queen, when I was lost beneath stone and fire. A voice called to me, a human voice. Gasps echoed again. Some nobles whispered in disbelief. Others stared at Daniel with renewed hatred. Daniel's breath caught. He remembered. A cave on a distant world, before the war truly began. An early mission of peace. He had been young then, part of a diplomatic escort. Negotiations had collapsed, when a quake tore through the ground. Rocks had fallen, tunnels had collapsed. He had pulled someone out. A young alien, injured, frightened. He had spoken to her softly as he shielded her from the falling debris, promising she would survive. She had looked at him with wide, frightened eyes, and he had carried her until rescue arrived. That young alien had been her. The Queen's next words confirmed it. It was you, she said. You are the one who saved me. The hall fell into complete silence. No one dared speak. The weight of her words filled the air like thunder. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to laugh at the cruel twist of fate. He had saved her once, long before the war, never knowing who she would become. And now she stood before him, ruler of the empire that had crushed his people. His lips twisted into a wry smile. So, what now? He asked. Do you execute your savior? The Queen tilted her head, studying him. Then, to the horror of her court, she turned to her people and declared, This man does not stand trial. He stands under my protection. The uproar was instant. Nobles shouted, guards shifted uneasily, voices rose in disbelief, but none could challenge her. Her word was law. Daniel stood in the middle of the chaos, unchained, staring at the Queen, who remembered his voice. He felt no victory, only the weight of a new question. What did it mean to be the human who saved the Queen of the enemy? And deep down, a darker thought stirred. Had fate just bound him to something greater than survival? The throne hall remained in chaos long after the Queen's words echoed through the chamber. The alien nobles hissed, clicked, and protested, their glittering eyes darting from Daniel to their ruler. Guards shifted uneasily, unsure if they should raise their spears again or stand down. Daniel stood still. His wrists were free of chains, but he did not move. He knew he was one step away from death. The only thing keeping him alive was the strange memory that tied him to the Queen. The Queen raised her hand, and silence fell once more. Her authority was absolute, even over the storm of outrage around her. This human is under my protection, she repeated, her voice echoing. Let no one touch him unless I command it. The guards obeyed instantly, lowering their weapons. The nobles, however, buzzed with anger. One bold lord stepped forward, his mandibles snapping. Your Majesty, he hissed, this is madness. He is the enemy. His species has spilled our blood. Countless soldiers died by human hands. How can you defend him? The Queen's gaze snapped toward him, sharp as a blade. Because without this human, I would not be standing here today. He saved my life before any of you swore loyalty to me. His voice was the first promise of safety I ever heard in the darkness. I do not forget debts. The hall fell silent again. The nobles dared not challenge her further, though their anger smoldered like fire hidden beneath ash. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He did not fully trust her words, but there was no denying she remembered something real, something only the two of them had shared years ago. The Queen turned to him. Come with me, she said simply. Two guards moved to flank him, but their spears did not touch him. They escorted him, not as a prisoner, but as someone important. Daniel walked in silence, following the Queen as she left the throne hall. The Queen's chambers. The corridors of the palace twisted like a maze of crystal and stone, glowing faintly with light. The queen led him into a private chamber where no nobles could follow. The doors shut behind them with a deep thud. Inside, the room was quieter, more personal. A pool of shimmering liquid sat in the center, reflecting the ceiling like a mirror. Strange flowers grew along the walls, their petals glowing faint blue. Daniel stood stiffly, unsure what this meant. His instincts screamed to stay alert. The queen removed the heavy crown from her head and set it aside. Without it, she looked less like a ruler and more like someone carrying weight on her shoulders. She studied him for a long time. "Do you remember it?" she asked. "The cave, the falling stone, my leg trapped beneath the rubble." Daniel's mind pulled the memory forward, clearer now. The smell of dust, the choking darkness, the sound of stone splitting. He had run, toward the cries he heard, not caring what species they belonged to. A young alien girl had been trapped, bleeding. He had shielded her with his body as more rock fell. "I remember," Daniel said slowly. His voice was rough, but steady. "You were afraid. I told you not to give up. I carried you until the rescue teams arrived." The queen's eyes softened just a little. "Yes, your words stayed with me. Hold on. I won't leave you. No one had ever spoken to me like that before. Not as a princess, not as a future queen. Just as someone who mattered." Daniel exhaled, his hands curling into fists. "Strange. I saved you once, and now your empire burns my world." Her gaze hardened, but she did not deny it. "The war was not my wish. It was demanded by my council. They feared humans. They called you unpredictable, uncontrollable, too dangerous to share the stars with." Perhaps they were right. But when I heard your voice today— She paused, her mandibles clicking softly. "I could not forget." Daniel let out a short, humorless laugh. "So what now? You remember me. That doesn't change what your soldiers did. It doesn't change the cities you burned." The queen tilted her head. "And it doesn't change what your soldiers did to ours. War leaves no clean hands." The silence that followed was heavy. Both knew the truth of her words. A dangerous memory. Later, when Daniel was left alone in a guest chamber, he sat on the edge of a stone bench, staring at the alien city beyond the window. Towers of crystal rose high into the sky, their tips glowing like stars. Ships floated in the distance, sleek and sharp like blades. He thought back to the cave. He had been younger then, filled with the hope that humanity could build bridges with new species. He had believed in peace. He had risked his life for someone he did not know, because that was what humans did. And now, humanity was broken, scattered. Earth's fleets were gone, millions were dead. His hands clenched, the irony cut deep. He had saved the very ruler who now commanded the empire that destroyed his people. A knock came at the door. A guard entered, placing a tray of food before him. Strange fruits, glowing liquid in a bowl, and bread-like pieces made of some alien grain. Daniel stared at it. For a long moment he considered refusing, but hunger gnawed at him, and he forced himself to eat. As he ate, he realized something important. The queen had put herself at risk by protecting him. Her council hated it. Her nobles whispered rebellion already. She had not spared him out of mercy alone. There was more. She needed something from him. The council's debate. Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, the queen faced her council. The lords and generals gathered around a glowing table, their voices sharp with anger. "This is unacceptable," one barked. "You cannot shelter the enemy." "He is dangerous," another hissed. "He should be executed as an example." "Your people will see this as weakness," a third added. The queen listened calmly, her claws folded before her. When they finished, she spoke in a tone that silenced the room. "You forget who I am. I am queen, because I do not forget debts. I am queen because I know honor. If we crush everything that is different, what kind of rulers are we?" The council shifted uneasily, but no one dared defy her openly. Still, their eyes betrayed their thoughts. Doubt spread like poison among them. Night reflections. That night, Daniel could not sleep. The alien bed was too soft, the air too thick with the scent of strange flowers. He paced the chamber, replaying the Queen's words in his mind. Why had she remembered him after all these years? Why had his voice struck her so strongly? Maybe because in that cave he had spoken not as a soldier, not as an enemy, but as a human being reaching out to another life. And maybe, just maybe, that had left a mark deeper than war. Daniel touched the scar on his arm, earned in one of the first battles of the war. His jaw tightened. Whatever her reasons, he knew one thing: his survival in this palace would not be easy. The nobles wanted him dead. The guards didn't trust him. And the Queen herself, she might trust him or she might simply be using him. But for now, he was alive. And that meant he still had a chance. A quiet meeting. The next day, the Queen summoned him again. This time, there were no guards in the chamber. Only her. She looked at him with calm eyes. "Daniel Reeve," she said, speaking his name carefully. "I must ask you something. Why do humans fight so fiercely even when the odds are hopeless? Your fleets were broken, your armies scattered, yet you never surrendered. Why?" Daniel stared at her, then let out a slow breath. "Because that's who we are," he said. "We fight because we believe tomorrow can be better, even if today is full of fire. We fight because every life matters. Every voice matters. You think we're dangerous because we don't kneel, but that's not weakness. That's strength." The Queen was silent for a long time. Her gaze studied him as if searching for lies, but she found none. Finally, she spoke softly. "Strange. Your words once saved me in a cave of stone. Perhaps now they might save more than just me." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" But the Queen did not answer. She turned away, looking out over the city beyond her window. For the first time, Daniel felt a flicker of something strange. Not trust, not yet. But the sense that his presence here was more than chance. And deep inside, he wondered, had his voice long ago in that cave changed the future of two species without him knowing? The palace was never truly silent. Even at night, the air carried the low hum of alien machinery, the distant thrum of ships docking, and the soft clicking of guards patrolling the endless halls. Yet for Daniel, the silence inside his guest chamber felt heavy, like the weight of a storm waiting to break. He lay on the strange bed, staring at the ceiling of crystal panels that glowed faint blue. His thoughts would not rest. He replayed the Queen's question again and again. Why do humans fight so fiercely, even when the odds are hopeless? She did not ask it out of curiosity alone. She wanted something. Maybe she wanted to understand humanity. Maybe she wanted to use his answer as a weapon. Daniel could not tell. But one thing was certain. Her decision to protect him had shaken the empire. The murmurs in the court. The next morning, Daniel was escorted by guards to a balcony that overlooked the city. From there, he could see the sprawling, alien capital, towers of crystal reaching toward the sky, bridges like spider silk stretched between them, and airships gliding silently in the distance. The guards stood behind him, stiff and watchful. They did not speak to him, but Daniel could hear whispers carried by the wind. He turned his head slightly. In the courtyards below, groups of alien nobles gathered in small circles, their mandibles clicking sharply. Their gestures were angry, their voices low but filled with heat. He could not hear their exact words, but he understood their tone. They were not pleased. Later, he overheard two guards speaking in hushed tones. "The council will not accept this," one said. "The Queen's choice weakens us." "She risks everything for a memory," the other replied. "If she does not see reason, others will act." Daniel's chest tightened. He knew enough about power to recognize the signs. The Queen was not just risking her reputation by sparing him. She was risking her throne. The Queen's burden that afternoon. The Queen summoned him again. This time they met in a quieter chamber filled with maps of star systems projected into the air. Stars glowed above them, shifting slowly like drifting embers. The Queen stood at the center, her tall form lit by the holographic light. She did not wear her crown. Without it, she looked less like a ruler and more like a soldier burdened by command. "Do you hear the whispers, Daniel Reeve?" she asked without turning. Daniel crossed his arms. "Hard to miss them. Your nobles. Don't seem happy you kept me alive." The Queen's mandibles clicked once, a sound like bitter amusement. "They are never happy when I show mercy. They believe strength is only measured by blood spilled." Daniel tilted his head. "And what do you believe?" She turned to face him. Her dark eyes locked onto his. "I believe strength is measured by survival. And survival comes not only from the sword, but from the voice that can end wars." Daniel studied her carefully. She meant those words, but could he trust them? "You think my voice can do that?" he asked. The Queen stepped closer. "I know it can. It did once when I was trapped in that cave. Your words kept me alive. Now, perhaps they can do the same for my empire." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Your empire, the same one that destroyed my people's homes." The Queen did not flinch. "Yes, and I do not expect you to forgive that. But you must understand, there are forces inside my court that want only endless war. They fear humans. They profit from your destruction. If they succeed, the fire between our species will never end." Her words rang with truth, but also danger. Daniel could see the weight pressing down on her shoulders. She was fighting not only against humanity, but against her own council. "You're saying your enemies are your own people?" Daniel asked. The Queen's gaze hardened. "Not all my people. Only those who see war as the only path. Already they whisper against me. Already they plot." Daniel's chest tightened. He remembered the guard's words. He remembered the angry nobles. This was no longer a whisper. It was the start of rebellion, a test of trust. The Queen moved to the star maps, her claws brushing across glowing lights. "I am asking you, Daniel Reeve, to trust me, to help me hold my throne, and in return, I will give your people a chance for peace." Daniel almost laughed. Trust her? The ruler of the empire that had crushed Earth? The thought felt impossible. Yet, if what she said was true, then refusing her meant war without end. He stared at her, his jaw tight. "You want me to help you keep power? Why me? You have armies. You have fleets." The Queen's eyes glowed faintly. "Because armies can be bought, fleets can be swayed, but you are human. And humans do not bow easily. If you stand beside me, if your voice speaks for me, it will show my enemies that I am not weak, that even the most defiant species can stand at my side." Daniel fell silent. He hated the idea of being used as a symbol, but deep down he understood her strategy. Her empire feared humanity. If she could turn one human into an ally, even as a prisoner, it would shake the very foundation of her enemy's arguments. Finally, he said, "I'll stand beside you if it means saving lives. But don't think for a second that I've forgiven what your empire did." The Queen inclined her head. "I do not ask for forgiveness, only for survival." The shadows of rebellion days passed. Daniel remained inside the palace, watched constantly but not chained. He saw the city more, its shining towers and glowing bridges. The common aliens went about their lives, unaware of the tension rising in the court. But the whispers grew louder. He noticed guards exchanging uneasy looks. He saw nobles whispering in corners, their eyes sharp with anger. One night he woke to the faint sound of scratching at his door. He tensed, ready for an attack, but it was only a servant slipping in a message. Daniel opened it. The words were written in the alien script, but he could read enough to understand. "The Queen will fall. Stay away when it happens." His stomach sank. This was no longer a whisper. It was a warning. Confrontation. The next day, Daniel confronted the Queen in her council chamber. "They're planning something," he said, holding out the note. "Someone slipped this under my door." The Queen read it, her eyes narrowing. "So it begins." Her voice was calm, but Daniel saw the tension in her claws, the way they pressed against the table. You knew this was coming, he said. Yes, she admitted. But not so soon. My enemies are bold. Daniel's jaw tightened. They'll come for you. Maybe even here. The Queen looked at him, her gaze steady. Then I must be ready. And so must you. Daniel frowned. Me? She stepped closer. If they strike, they will strike against us both. My choice to protect you has already tied your fate to mine. If I fall, you will not live to see another sunrise in this palace. Her words were sharp, but not cruel. They were truth. Daniel felt the weight of it. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was a piece in a game of power, one that could end with his death if he played it wrong. The human's resolve. That night, Daniel sat by the window again, staring at the city. He thought about Earth, about the cities reduced to ash, about the friends he had lost. He thought about the Queen, about the memory that bound them together, and about the rebellion brewing around her. He did not trust her fully. But he could not ignore the truth. If she fell, her enemies would take power. And if they took power, war would never end. Humanity would burn until nothing remained. His fists clenched. He had sworn once to protect his people, to fight until the last breath. Maybe fate had put him here for that reason, not to kneel, not to forgive, but to stand, because survival demanded it. The choice ahead. The next morning, Daniel walked into the Queen's chamber without waiting for permission. Guards moved to stop him, but the Queen waved them aside. He stood before her, his shoulders squared. If they're coming for you, then they're coming for me too. I'm not sitting back and waiting. If I'm going to survive this, I need to fight. The Queen tilted her head, studying him. Slowly, a faint glow returned to her eyes. So the human voice chooses to stand. Daniel's jaw tightened. Don't mistake this for loyalty. I'm not your ally. I'm not your friend. But if standing with you means saving my people from endless war, then I'll stand. The Queen inclined her head in respect. That is all I ask. And in that moment, the lines between prisoner and protector blurred. Daniel was no longer just a human captured in chains. He had become part of the Queen's battle for survival. But in the shadows of the palace, rebellion stirred, waiting for the chance to strike. And when it came, Daniel knew he would be forced to choose, not just between survival and death, but between hate and something far more dangerous. The palace no longer felt safe. The air carried tension like a storm building before lightning. Servants walked faster than usual, their eyes lowered. Guards gripped their weapons too tightly, scanning every shadow. The nobles, once loud and proud, now spoke in hushed voices, their mandibles clicking with anger and fear. Daniel could feel it in every hallway he walked through. Rebellion was no longer just whispers. It was about to strike. The warning one night, as Daniel tried to sleep, a sharp knock echoed at his chamber door. He stood quickly, ready for trouble. When the door opened, it was not a guard but a young alien servant. Her thin frame trembled, and her glowing eyes darted nervously around the hall. Human, she whispered in broken common tongue. They come tonight. Not wait longer. They come for Queen. And for you. Daniel's stomach tightened. He stepped closer. Who? She shook her head quickly, too afraid to say. Then she slipped away before the guards could notice she had been there. Daniel paced the room, his fists clenching. He had expected this, but not so soon. Tonight, the palace would turn into a battlefield. He looked at his bare hands. No weapon, no armor, only his training and the fire that had carried him through war. The first strike, it began with the sound of shouts echoing through the halls. Then came the clash of weapons, the thud of heavy boots, the sharp hiss of energy blades being drawn. Daniel rushed to the door, but before he could open it, the wall shook with the force of an explosion. Smoke filled the corridor. Guards shouted orders, their voices drowned by the screeching war cries of rebels. The rebellion had begun. Daniel forced his way out into the hall. Rebels, dressed in dark armor, their insignias hidden, clashed with Palace guards. Sparks flew as spears met blades. The rebels moved with ruthless precision, cutting down loyal soldiers one by one. Daniel grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, a short energy blade shaped like a jagged spear. Its weight felt strange in his hand, but he had no time to think. A rebel lunged at him, mandibles snapping. Daniel ducked, swung the blade upward, and cut the rebel down with a swift strike. His muscles burned with the memory of countless battles. He was a soldier again, protecting the queen. He fought his way toward the throne chamber, knowing the rebels' true target. If they killed the queen, the empire would fall into chaos. Humanity's last chance for peace would vanish. The halls glowed, with fire from shattered crystals. Smoke stung his eyes. Bodies of rebels and guards littered the ground. Finally, he reached the grand chamber. The queen stood at the center, her golden armor shining in the dim light. Her crown was gone, replaced by a battle helm that curved like horns. She held a long staff tipped with a glowing blade. Around her, loyal guards fought desperately to hold back waves of rebels. But they were losing ground. When Daniel entered, her eyes snapped to him. For a moment, time froze. "You came," she said. Daniel lifted the stolen blade. "You saved my life once. Tonight I return the favor." The queen's eyes glowed faintly. She nodded once. "Then stand with me." The battle rebels surged into the chamber. Daniel moved instinctively, his body remembering every drill, every battle. He struck hard and fast, weaving between the towering aliens. His small size made him harder to hit. He ducked beneath a spear, rolled and drove his blade into a rebel's chest. Beside him, the queen fought like a storm. Her staff spun in wide arcs, slicing through armor, scattering sparks with each strike. She was taller, stronger, and every movement carried the weight of command. Together they carved a path through the chaos. At one point, 3 rebels rushed Daniel at once. He blocked the first, dodged the second, but the third nearly struck his side. The queen's staff cut the rebel down before the blade could land. "You fight well for one so small," she said. Daniel smirked through the sweat and blood. "And you fight well for a queen." For a brief second, amidst the storm of battle, they shared something close to respect. The betrayer is. The fight raged. A tall figure stepped into the chamber. His armor was black and silver, his mandibles sharp, his eyes burning with hate. He was one of the queen's council lords, the very ones who had whispered against her. "Your reign ends tonight," he roared. "You are weak, sparing the enemy. Your throne belongs to those who still have strength." The rebels cheered, their morale rising. The queen straightened, her staff glowing brighter. "Strength is not slaughter," she answered coldly. "Strength is survival, and you will not survive this night." The traitor charged, his weapon sparking with energy. The queen met him head-on. Their blades clashed, sparks flying, the sound echoing through the chamber. Daniel cut down another rebel and looked at the duel. The queen was strong, but the traitor was just as skilled. They moved like 2 storms colliding, each strike shaking the ground. If she fell, everything would end. Daniel's choice, a rebel, broke through the guard line and lunged at the queen from behind. Daniel reacted without thought. He threw himself forward, taking the blow across his arm instead of her back. Pain seared through him, but he forced his blade into the rebel's chest, dropping him. The queen turned, her eyes widening at the sight of Daniel bleeding but still standing. "You shielded me," she said, shocked. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Don't waste time, finish him." The queen spun back to the traitor. With renewed fury, she drove her staff against his blade, sparks flying. With a sudden strike, she pierced his chest, ending the duel. The traitor staggered, then collapsed. With a final hiss, the rebels froze, their leader fallen. The loyal guards pressed forward, cutting them down. Within minutes, the chamber was clear, bodies scattered across the floor. Silence fell. Smoke curled upward from broken crystals. Aftermath. Daniel sank to one knee, clutching his wounded arm. Blood dripped down, staining the alien stone. The queen moved to his side, her staff lowering. She studied him with strange intensity. "You bled for me. You, my enemy." Daniel's breathing was heavy. I didn't do it for you. I did it because survival demands it. If you fall, humanity falls too. The Queen's mandibles clicked, softly. Perhaps. Or perhaps you are more than you admit. She lifted her staff and signaled the guards. Take him to the healers. No harm must come to him. The guards obeyed, lifting Daniel carefully. As they carried him away, he caught the Queen's gaze one last time. For the first time, he saw not just a ruler, not just an alien queen, but someone who remembered a human voice that once promised safety in the dark. Shadows remain. The rebellion had been crushed in the palace, but Daniel knew it was not the end. More lords still whispered. More enemies waited in the shadows. But something had changed tonight. He and the Queen had fought together, side by side, their survival bound as one. As Daniel closed his eyes in the healer's chamber, exhaustion pulling him into sleep, one thought echoed in his mind. He had walked into this palace in chains. Now he stood free, his fate tied to the most powerful being in the empire, and the galaxy itself might soon tremble because of it. The palace was quiet now, though the echoes of battle still lingered in the halls. Smoke curled from shattered crystals, and the faint smell of burnt metal hung in the air. Daniel Reeve sat in the healer's chamber, his arm bandaged and body exhausted. Pain throbbed in his side, but it was nothing compared to the weight in his mind. The rebellion had been stopped, but he knew it was not over. Those who sought power would try again, and the whispers in the shadows promised more danger. But one thought gave him strength. He had survived tonight, and he had fought beside the Queen. The Queen's decision. The next morning, the Queen summoned Daniel to the council chamber. The light from the tall windows made her golden armor gleam, and she wore her crown once more. Her eyes held the weight of command, but also a rare softness reserved only for him. Daniel Reeve, she said, her voice calm and commanding. Tonight we face the reality of my empire. The council will never accept mercy, but I will not bend to them. You have fought beside me, bled beside me. I want you to speak for humanity, not as a prisoner, but as a voice of reason. Daniel hesitated. Speak for humanity? He had walked into chains, had fought to survive, and now she asked him to be more than a soldier. She asked him to be a symbol. Why me? He asked quietly. There are millions of humans out there. Why should my voice matter? The Queen stepped closer. Because your voice is the one I remember, the one that saved me. And if that voice can sway my empire to peace, perhaps it can prevent countless deaths. You are the bridge between our species, Daniel. You may not trust me, but trust your own strength. Daniel's chest tightened. He had fought for survival his entire life, but now survival alone was not enough. If he wanted humanity to have a future, he had to rise above anger and hatred, at least for one moment. Rallying the council chamber filled quickly. Loyal generals and guards gathered, their expressions wary but respectful. Rebels had been captured or fled, but the tension remained. Any wrong word, any wrong movement, and violence could flare again. The Queen raised her hand. This rebellion is the beginning, not the end. There are those who seek endless war, those who profit from bloodshed. But we will show them another path. Daniel stepped forward, unsure if his voice would carry any weight. People of the Zyrath Empire, he said, speaking slowly, clearly. I have fought against you, yes. I have seen your armies, your power, and your will. But I have also seen mercy. I have seen a queen who remembers a small act of kindness. I am not here to destroy you, nor to forgive the wrongs of war. I am here to speak for the future we can create together. The chamber was silent. Every eye turned toward him, some curious, some skeptical. He continued, his voice growing stronger. You have strength and you have power, but power without wisdom destroys itself. I am human, yet I fought beside your queen. I bled beside her, and if my voice can inspire even a fraction of what she inspired in me, then we can end war. can build peace and we can survive as neighbors in this galaxy. Choose life. Choose hope. Shifting loyalties. A murmur ran through the room. Some generals whispered to each other, while guards shifted uneasily. The Queen watched Daniel carefully, her mandibles clicking softly. Finally, one of the older lords stepped forward. He had fought countless battles, led thousands of soldiers, and yet he looked uncertain. Perhaps there is sense in what you say, he admitted. We have been led by fear for too long. Perhaps it is time to try another way. Another voice followed, then another. Slowly the council, once united in anger, began to hesitate. Daniel's words had not changed everything, but they had planted a seed that could grow into unity. The Queen's eyes glowed faintly. She turned to Daniel. Your voice has done what mine could not. You have reminded my people that strength is not only in war, but in trust. Perhaps humanity is not so different after all. Daniel felt a spark of hope ignite within him. This was bigger than survival. This was the start of something new, uniting the Empire. Over the next few days, Daniel and the Queen worked together to stabilize the Empire. Loyal soldiers patrolled the streets, ensuring order. Captured rebels were given trials, and some were allowed to return to service under strict conditions. Daniel observed carefully, offering advice where he could. His knowledge of human resilience, of strategy that valued life as well as victory, proved invaluable. Slowly, the Queen's people began to see the wisdom of mercy alongside strength. In private, the Queen spoke to him again. You have changed them, she said softly. Not with force, but with words. That is a strength few possess. Daniel shook his head. I didn't do it alone. You risked everything for me. Without that, none of this would be possible. The Queen smiled faintly, her gaze steady. Perhaps. But your voice was the spark. Sometimes one spark is enough to ignite a fire that can light the galaxy. A new alliance weeks passed. The Council, though still cautious, began to trust Daniel and the Queen's vision. Trade resumed between human settlements and the Xerath Empire. Ships that had once carried war now carried supplies, medicine, and diplomats. Daniel walked through the capital one evening, observing the bustling city. Humans and Xerath alike worked together in careful harmony. Children played in the streets laughing. Merchants exchanged goods and soldiers trained side by side. It was a small step, but it was a step toward hope. The Queen joined him on a balcony overlooking the city. You see what your voice can do, she said quietly. Daniel nodded, a faint smile forming. I see what one human can do when they choose to stand not just for themselves but for others. The Queen looked at him thoughtfully. You have shown us that even in a galaxy filled with war, one voice can change the course of history. The voice of peace news spread across the Empire. Humans who had once been seen as enemies were now recognized as allies. Stories circulated of the soldier who spoke truth in the throne chamber, who bled alongside the Queen and who refused to bow to fear. Rebels who had survived the first attack began to rethink their choices. Some pledged loyalty to the Queen and to Daniel's vision. Others left the Empire unwilling to follow a path of cooperation. But the galaxy was watching. Other species, once wary of humanity and the Xerath, began to consider diplomacy over conflict. The ripple of one soldier's courage and one queen's mercy extended far beyond the palace walls. A future forged in the throne hall, Daniel stood beside the queen once more. No chains bound him, no guards hovered too close. He was free, yet bound in responsibility. The queen addressed the council and the citizens who had gathered, her voice echoing with authority. The future will not be shaped by fear or anger. It will be shaped by wisdom, courage, and the voices that choose to speak for life. Let this be the dawn of a new era for the Xerath Empire and for humanity. Daniel looked around at the assembled crowd. He saw hope in their eyes, a cautious but real promise that peace could endure. And for the first time in a long while, he felt that humanity's fight had not been in vain. Walking freely, as the crowd dispersed, Daniel and the Queen walked, side by side through the palace halls. The crystal towers reflected the sunlight, creating patterns of color across the stone floor. "You saved me once," the Queen said softly. "And now, perhaps, I have saved you, in return." Daniel glanced at her. "I don't know if I'd call it saved," he said with a faint grin. "But I do know this. I walked in shackled and now I walk free. Not just in chains but in purpose. And maybe that's what makes a difference." The Queen inclined her head, a rare, almost human gesture of respect. "Purpose, yes, that is the true strength of your species." Together, they looked out at the city, knowing the road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, wars to prevent, and negotiations to make. But for the first time, both humans and Xyrath could imagine a galaxy where survival did not require endless bloodshed. Daniel's voice, once a simple sound in a cave, had grown into a force that changed an empire. And the Queen, who remembered, it had chosen to act. Together they had sparked the dawn of a new age. The chains were gone. The war was not over, but hope had arrived.